Welcome to my review of Conference Championship Weekend. It's finally here. This is what the whole season has built up to. This pinnacle here. This is going to determine so many things this weekend. It's going to determine college football playoff spots. It's going to determine New Year's Six positions. It's going to determine conference bragging rights. It's going to determine high bowl games for these teams coming out of these conferences. It's going to determine how teams are able to set up for next season. Everything is on the line this week, and your team might not have made it into these matchups. I know my Boise State Broncos came up just short, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but Boise State Broncos coming up just short is unfortunate, and your team might be in the same boat. However, this is still a major weekend of college football. Your team might not be in there, but you're going to want to grab a couch and watch these games because these are going to be some fun games, and at the end of the day, there's only so much college football left. You know, we've got bowl game season coming up here, but this is the last weekend that we have with, 9 matchups if you count the California versus USC game. This is the last weekend that we have with that many college football. This is the last weekend of major college football for the rest of the year where you're going to have multiple matchups with major ramifications. So this is an incredible weekend of college football for all college football fans, but especially for these 20 FBS teams, and congratulations to all of them. We're going to go through every single conference in college football for their conference championship preview. So all 5, Power 5, all 5, Group of 5, we're going to go through every single one of them. I won't preview the USC California game. Enjoy your consolation end of the season game there. Neither of those teams are bowl eligible, but it's a great season here. It's been a great season. It's been an amazing season coming off of the weird COVID year last year, coming into a finally full regular season or mostly regular season of college football. It has been an up and down year, and I think we can expect that same thing here in the conference championship games. We're going to see a lot of surprising wins, surprising upsets, and I cannot wait to see how things shake out in one of the craziest years of college football. So let's get right into it. As always, I'm going to go through all the teams. So each of the teams that made into these games, I'm going to give you the times of the matchups. All times are in Eastern time, the where to watch them, the channels. I'm going to give you Vegas's predictions. I'm going to give you ESPN's predictions. I'm going to go through the significant wins and losses of all of these teams. I'll give you a little bit of analysis on the programs. I'll give you a player of the game for each matchup, and then my own preview. Talking about my own previews, this is my first year that I've done these top 10 games of the week preview videos. I've had a blast doing it, and I've had a pretty good year. Predicting wins, losses, I'm 80 out of 130, so 62%, which is only 10 games down from ESPN's predictions. They are 90 out of 130 for 69%. So pretty much neck and neck right there, ESPN and myself. What I've done really well at is predicting against the spread, not a traditional way of predicting against the spread, but just an over-under against what the overall spread is being projected at, where the overall point spread will be under or over that. And on that, I've been 94 out of 130, so 72%. So I'm excited to get into this. Usually I would rank the games in order of most watchable matchups. I didn't want to do that for conference championship game weekend. Every single one of these matchups is significant. There might be bigger ramifications for winning some of these games. Absolutely. And there's some of these games are, at the end of the day, more important in determining certain factors for college football landscape as a whole. But when it comes down to it, every single one of these games is important. Every single one of these games is a huge accomplishment for the teams that have made it into it. To be able to make it into a conference championship game is a major accomplishment. And while I might have negative or certain views about certain conferences, if you watch my Liberties move to Conference USA, you know what I'm talking about. At the end of the day, I'm going to show respect to conference champions because that is a significant win. It sets you up to go and succeed next season. It shows that you are a team that was able to achieve great things at your level within college football. You're in the top tier of college football, being able to go out and achieve that and have that conference championship trophy, and that's a significant deal. So I don't want to minimize any. I want to show respect to all the conference champions here coming out of this weekend, and so I just wanted to go through an order of appearance, Friday through Saturday, earliest game through latest game, order of appearance, no particular order of watchability. Let's get into it then. Right off the bat here, we've got number 8 and 4. So 8 and 4, Western Kentucky at UTSA, 11 and 1. 7 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS Sports Network, and that's going to be on Friday. Both these matchups I'm about to preview are on Friday. This has been a tale of two seasons for each of these teams. UTSA riding high the whole year, undefeated until the last game of the season, and takes a rock in the knee to North Texas and goes down. Shocker, out of nowhere, or actually I don't think that was their last game of the season. But right there at the end of the season, takes a loss to North Texas and knocks off their chance at an undefeated season. Really a major blow to the Roadrunners here, who who are still having an incredible season for a program that ESPN was only projecting them going 8-4. Not ESPN, sorry. Athlon Sports only projected them going 8-4. Myself, I saw this team going 6-6. So the fact that they were able to go out and win as many games as they did, and yeah, that North Texas game was their last game of the regular season. So not finishing the regular season the way they wanted to, but a chance to come here into their conference championship game and finish the way they want to in this game, set themselves up to go and win their go play in their top conference's bowl game here, set themselves up to get back into the AP rankings here and move forward into next season, or rise up the AP rankings here at the end of the season and move forward into next year as a team that has a high ceiling based on where they start. Western Kentucky, complete opposite story. They started out the season 1-4. It didn't even look like they were going to get bowl eligible. Had losses to Army, Indiana, Mississippi, Michigan State, I think is that? Yeah, Michigan State, and UTSA. So losses all the way down the stretch. Close game against UTSA, but they ended up losing that one 52-46. So this is a rematch for them in this game. But after that, they went and won 7 straight games. After that loss to UTSA, they won 7 straight games to get not just bowl eligible, but to get into their conference championship game with a chance at a rematch here against the Roadrunners, which is just an incredible Cinderella reversal story here for the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. An incredible job by this program. So UTSA sitting here, their major loss is that North Texas game. They have a win against Illinois. They have wins against UAB. They have wins against Western Kentucky. So this is a very interesting matchup. Vegas is predicting Western Kentucky winning by 3, and ESPN is projecting UTSA winning with a 50.7% chance of winning. So only 7% over for UTSA winning this by ESPN. Now, a key determiner in this one is going to be my player of the game is going to be the Western Kentucky quarterback here in Bailey Zapp, and I am really terrible with pronouncing names. I really am. I will let you know that right off the bat. So don't have too high expectations. But Zappe, so Zapp or Zappe or however you say his name. Regardless of how you say his name, what you can say clearly is his statistics, and he is probably one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the nation. 4,000. Now, wait, hold your hats for a second while you listen to how many yards this kid has thrown for. 4,968 yards passing. That is insane. This guy is he's definitely in this matchup going to pass 5,000 yards passing on the season. Some people go their entire career, especially if they only play junior, senior season, with less than 5,000 yards passing. I mean, there's many quarterbacks in the nation, starting quarterbacks, that have under 2,000 yards passing. And this guy has over 5,000 yards passing and 52 touchdowns. In both of those categories, he is number 1 in the nation. The last matchup that they played against Western Kentucky, which was a loss, but that they were close in, he threw for 523 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception. So this is a guy that can throw the ball all over the field, a completely underrated prospect. I will admit, I have not seen him play this season, and I had no idea that he was this prolific. I cannot wait for this matchup and to see what he can do with a rock in this game. Now, Western Kentucky, favored by Vegas. UTSA, favored by ESPN. Which way am I leaning on this one? Well, UTSA, and I think that this is two programs that are very evenly matched despite the difference in record here. I think these two programs are very evenly matched, and their last matchup clearly shows that. I think that UTSA here is playing with a chip on their shoulder. If they hadn't lost to North Texas last week, I think that there's a chance that Western Kentucky would have won this one. But UTSA, they had a lot of hopes here, maybe going down, maybe San Diego State loses, Cincinnati gets into the playoffs, and maybe then UTSA is able to get that Group of 5 bid to the college football playoff. That Group of 5 bid to the New Year's Six with Cincinnati taking the CFP bid instead. So maybe that is something that they were shooting for, and definitely wanting to finish the season undefeated and be able to at least claim, like UCF did a few seasons ago, be able to claim that we were shorthanded, we deserved a chance, that kind of thing. They had big hopes and goals for the season, and they take a loss at the end of their year like that in a blowout loss to North Texas. North Texas is not a good team, 6-6. So very, very disappointing end of the season. So they have a chip on their shoulder. They have a lot to prove in this one. I think that overall they probably are the better team. I mean, 11-1 here, the much better season than most people were projecting. I think they are the better program this one. I think they're coming in with a chip on their shoulder, and they're wanting to set themselves up to go out and succeed next season, which all starts by how you finish this year. So I think UTSA will get the win in this one. I'm calling over on the over-under on this one, and I think UTSA gets the win, but in a very close-fought matchup. And like I said, I cannot wait to see Bailey throw the ball around the field on Friday. All right, Pac-12 matchup. Here we go. This is a 10-2 number 10 Oregon who had hopes for the playoffs. They were right in it until losing to this team, number 17, 9-3 Utah, who destroyed Oregon's shot at getting into the playoffs. A shot they probably shouldn't have even had with that loss to Stanford on their record, but committee likes the head-to-head matchups, and Oregon had beaten Ohio State, so they were in there. If they'd won out, they probably would have been in the playoffs, but a loss to Utah wiped that out, and now they're sitting here at number 10 with no shot of getting into the playoffs, coming in to face their not rival, but a team that knocked them off here in Utah. The game that's going to be held in Las Vegas, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC on Friday. Utah is favored by 3 points and given a 61% chance of winning, according to ESPN. Like I said, Oregon with that loss, significant loss there to Stanford, a team that's 3-9. That was a surprise loss. Oregon overlooking them, not ready for it. Obviously, Oregon a better team, but just anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday takes the loss. Utah was a little bit more surprising. I was predicting, if you'd watched my top 10 games of the videos, top 10 games of the week videos, you would have known or seen that I was predicting a win by Utah in that game. And a lot of people were. Actually, Utah was favored in that matchup. So I was predicting a win. Utah got the win. I was not predicting it to be quite as big as it was. I was calling over on the over-under, which I was right on. But Utah won significantly, 7-38. I mean, they destroyed Oregon, in all honesty. And then, an Oregon team that has some good wins, obviously. Win here against Ohio State. They have a win to start the season against Fresno State, a very good Fresno State team out of the Mountain West. And it's a Utah team that started off the season very slow. Losses here to BYU, San Diego State. They started the season 1-2 and actually had to do a quarterback change. Well, since that quarterback change, they're 7-1. They dropped one more game to Oregon State, but they have wins here against UCLA, Arizona State, and Oregon. And that's going to be with their quarterback here with Rising. And that's my top court player of the game here for the Pac-12 championship game. And he is a rising star here for Utah. He has thrown for 2,109 yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But the big stat here is that in that time, he is 7-1 as the starting quarterback here for Utah, and a big part of their success. If they hadn't made that quarterback change, the team, not that the teams they lost to are bad. I mean, BYU and San Diego State are quality losses. Both of those teams are ranked in the top 25. BYU's in the top 15. San Diego State is in the top 20. Both of those teams are quality programs. Oregon State is a little bit more of a head scratcher, but both of those teams are quality programs. So it's not necessarily bad losses, but the fact that the quarterback change here, I think, definitely had a major impact in Utah finishing the season strong the way that they did. So he's also a runner. He can run the ball 346 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns. And the last matchup they had against Oregon, he didn't necessarily play a massive part, only 178 yards passing, but he didn't make any major mistakes. I believe he had a touchdown on the ground. I'd have to double-check that one. But regardless, he didn't make any major mistakes in the matchup, and he got them the win. Can they come back and get the win here in the Pac-12 championship game? Well, they are favored in this one, but I think in this one, Oregon has the upper hand. They want to finish the season strong. They're obviously disappointed, very disappointed, but they're also very angry because they're disappointed that they aren't playing in the playoffs. And whose fault is that? Well, it's Utah's fault right here. They're ready to come in and get this win. They lost. They were unprepared. They were caught out of position, and they lost the game to Utah. And I don't think that's going to happen again. A lot of times when you see these matchups, rematches from earlier in the season, regular season, you usually see a reversal. I mean, we all remember a few years back, 2014, when Arizona beat Oregon, and then Oregon ended up beating Arizona in the Pac-12 championship game, and Boise State played and beat Arizona. So usually you'll see a reversal there. Boise State's seen it happen to them several times when playing Fresno State in championship game versus regular season, and vice versa. So I think that Oregon will take the win in this one. I think it's been an incredibly close-fought game. I am excited to see how Oregon finishes the year here, and I would love to see an upset by Utah. Not that I have, Boise State fans, we do have some animosity against Oregon, but let's be honest, we also have some significant animosity against Utah as well. So it's not necessarily that I'm rooting for Utah in this one, but I like seeing the underdogs, which Utah is the underdog. I would like to see them take the win, but I think Oregon will grab the win in this one. I'm calling over on the over-under. All right, that's going to take us into Saturday here. So the Big 12 championship game, we've got 10-2 number 9 Baylor versus number 5 Oklahoma State, who has just roared from nowhere. I mean, nobody saw Oklahoma State as a team that was a real playoff contender early in the season. I mean, they weren't even ranked when they played Boise State, and they have come back all the way from that, all the way through a narrow win against Boise State, a 1-point win against Boise State, which I want to say it up front so I don't have to talk about it later on. Boise State absolutely won that game, but a referee blew the game by calling a fumble return for a touchdown not down by contact, but they called the knee down when he clearly wasn't, and on the replay it showed he wasn't, but they couldn't put the touchdown back on the board. It was in the last minutes of the game, and Oklahoma State ended up winning that game, where that touchdown would have been a win for Boise State, won it by 1 point. So that's out of the way. The main point is that Oklahoma State here has roared back from a team that wasn't even in consideration early on in the season to have an incredible year. Only one loss all the way out here, a loss to earlier in the season here to Iowa State. But other than that, they have wins against Boise State, Baylor, Texas, and Oklahoma. Big wins for this program as they have put themselves just on the outside of the playoffs. Now, some things probably have to happen. There is some conversation, some discussion that if Oklahoma State beats Baylor significantly, regardless of how Cincinnati performs, especially if they struggle to win, Oklahoma State might jump Cincinnati. Now, I think that the playoff committee is in a position where they know the uproar that would cause even if Oklahoma State is more deserving. I think the committee is in a position where they're going to, if Cincinnati wins the game, as long as it's not, some really ugly, drawn-out struggle where Cincinnati barely wins in like 5 overtimes or something like that. Something like, that level. If Cincinnati is at all successful in their matchup, I think that they will have that top 4 slot. So Oklahoma State's probably needing a loss here by Cincinnati, or a loss by Alabama, or a loss by Michigan. One of those to happen for them to be able to jump in. But the fact that they put themselves in this position, based on where they were at the beginning of the season, based on even having a loss here against Iowa State, which could have derailed the season and didn't. The fact that they're here at the end of the season is a big accomplishment for this program. This is going to be at noon Eastern Time, ABC in Arlington, Texas. Oklahoma State is favored by 5.5 points and given a 63.7% chance of winning this game. Baylor, significant losses on their season. It's not necessarily been the year that they hoped for, but hey, they're sitting here at the end of the season here contending, not for the playoffs. They're not a contender here at number 9 to jump into the playoffs, but contending to win the Big 12, which would be significant for Baylor. So Baylor Bears here. So their losses, they did lose to Oklahoma State. This is a rematch, 14-24, and they lost to TCU. And I actually predicted I called Baylor in the win. I did call Baylor to win that game, but I said, hey, this is a historic rivalry. It was the 110th game of the series. I said this could be a win by TCU. I'm too chicken to call it, but you better watch, and TCU ended up winning. So I wish I'd called the win by TCU, but unfortunate there. And regardless, Baylor, there's some other issues there with the TCU game with being a rivalry mode, so I'm not necessarily going to blame the loss there for them. They have some good wins here. BYU, that's a very, very good win by this program, and Oklahoma. And this is a major matchup here because this is 2 great teams. It's exciting to watch, and it has certain playoff ramifications as well. Player of the game for me is going to be the Oklahoma State running back Warren here. He's rushed for 1,134 yards and 11 touchdowns. The matchup that they played against Baylor, he rushed for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's had a little bit less of a significant impact the last 6 games, only 100-yard rushing game in the last 6 games. But starting from the Boise State game where he had 200 yards rushing, the next 3 games in a row after that, so 4 games overall in a row, he had over 100 yards rushing in all. That really sparked Oklahoma State's season here and jump-started them into being where they are now, sitting in a position to jump into the playoffs. So I think he needs to have a big game in this one. I think Oklahoma State needs to win big. I think that they are going to win. I think that's projected here by everyone and also by me that they are going to get this win. But they need to win big. I'm talking 21 points so that they have a chance of jumping over Cincinnati into those playoff rankings, or Michigan, or Michigan would be incredibly unlikely, but at least even if Cincinnati, Michigan, and Alabama and Georgia, regardless of the matchup, how that plays out, because I think and I'll talk about that later, so I don't want to talk about it now. But regardless of how at least the Michigan and Cincinnati games play out, they need a big win in this one to put themselves in contention to hold their hold their own destiny in their hands here. So Oklahoma State, I'm projecting a win. I'm projecting over on the over-under. I don't think it's going to be the massive blowout win that they need because Baylor is a good program. I'm excited for this matchup. I cannot wait. Starting off the Saturday, the big championship game Saturday, championship week Saturday. Sorry, stumbling on the stretch there. Championship Saturday, noon Eastern time, Baylor versus Oklahoma State. All right. This is the MAC Championship is next. It's going to be also set at noon on ESPN. It's Kent State 7-5, Kent State at 8-4, Northern Illinois. Kent State favored by 3.5 points, given a 50.2% chance of winning. A lot of losses by both these programs, but Kent State actually has some good losses. He lost to Texas A&M, Iowa, Maryland, Western Michigan, and Central Michigan aren't great losses, but the other three aren't terrible losses for this program. And if they played some lower tier Power 5 or other Group of 5 teams, they might be sitting here at a better record. But at 7-5, most teams that are sitting at 7-5 are happy to be bowl eligible. 7-5 Kent State is actually sitting here in a conference championship game, which is a big win for this program. So their only real significant win is against Northern Illinois, 52-47, so a close win, but they have won this game already this season. And this is a rematch for this program. Like I said, talking about rematches, is Northern Illinois able to come? Have they learned the lessons? They're 8-4. Are they able to come into this one and get the win like they should have earlier in the season for the Huskies here? So Northern Illinois losses against Wyoming, Michigan, Kent State, and Western Michigan. So it's interesting that both programs lost to Western Michigan, and yet Western Michigan isn't sitting here in the MAC championship game. Wins here, not as significant. Win against Georgia Tech, a 3-9 Georgia Tech, but it's a Power 5 win. The top player of the game for me is going to be the quarterback from Northern Illinois. He's thrown for over 2,000 yards, 2,314 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. He also rushed for 523 yards and 3 touchdowns. So if he's able to have a big game, I think that is going to be significant in getting this win for Northern Illinois. I do think that they're going to get the win. The last matchup was incredibly close. Northern Illinois sitting here having a better finish to the season. I just think that they're setting themselves up to have a good win in this. And like I said, both of these teams are basically evenly matched. When you have teams that are evenly matched, you go to other factors. And one of those factors is that it's incredibly hard to win the same game twice in a row because you've played your card, especially when it's a rematch at the end of the season when both teams have seen everything. There's a chip on their shoulder. You don't want to lose twice to the same team because that's embarrassing. There's a lot of factors in this one. So both these teams are playing for the same thing here. Neither of them are in competition for New Year's Six bowls. Neither of them are in competition for anything massive, but they are in competition for this MAC championship game, which is a significant game. It is a significant accomplishment. So with the same motivation for both programs, but some additional factors from Northern Illinois, I think Northern Illinois gets the win in this one. I'm going to call slightly over on the over-under. All right. Mountain West, this is the one that I know probably most of my viewers have been most excited for, so sorry it took us 22 minutes, but like I said, I'm just going in order of appearance according to how ESPN lays it out, not going in order of preference. So, Mountain West Championship game, but if I was going in order of preference, top games of the week, this would have been towards the top, one of the best matchups, because this is an exciting matchup. It's 9-3 Utah State at 11-1 San Diego State, number 19 San Diego State at 3 p.m. on Fox. Now, and again, I said this earlier in my video, I will admit I'm not 100% sure on how this works. I have found nothing to either counter my statement or to back it up. I believe that based on what other analysts are saying, what has been announced, what was talked about when the system was set in place, that if a group of 5 team gets to the playoffs, that group of 5 New Year's 6 slot is still open, which it should be. If it's not, it's an absolute travesty, because if the winner of the SEC is playoff eligible, the second place SEC team still goes to their New Year's 6 game. And the New Year's 6 slot is supposed to replicate that system. It's supposed to simulate it. It combines 5 conferences into one slot versus one conference going into a bowl game slot. So if that second team slot is still not available, if the first team slot goes to the playoffs, that needs to be fixed. That is absolutely horrible. It further extenuates and further creates divide within college football where there really shouldn't be, because we see it year after year that the group of 5 Power 5 gap is not as significant as people think it is. Look at the Mountain West. Mountain West has a ton of Power 5 wins this year. We already talked about San Diego State beating Utah there, and Boise State beat BYU and was this close. They did beat Oklahoma State, so just not technically when everything was said and done. So that gap is not that significant. And if that is the way the system is set up, where, hey, if the group of 5 team makes it into the playoffs, that's it, you don't have a shot, then that I have no words for a system that is that corrupt and unfair. So I'm going to work off a system that works, the system that is fair, the system that I assume is how it should be. But like I said, I don't have any actual paper evidence to back me up. But also, I don't have any to contradict me on this. So I think if San Diego State wins this game, if Cincinnati stays in top 4 and makes it into the playoffs, that San Diego State will go to a New Year's 6 game. So this is a significant matchup here. It's a Mountain West championship game, so it's the top group of 5 championship game. And it's sitting here with significant ramifications where the winner of this game could go to a New Year's 6 bowl game. I wish that it was Boise State facing up against San Diego State, but Boise State lost to San Diego State last week in a close one. So unfortunately, Broncos are out of this, and it's Utah State, a team that Boise State beat, who has to go represent for the Mountain Division. Hopefully goes and gets an upset here against San Diego State. Got to say, hopefully, because as all true Boise State fans, we hate San Diego State, and I'd rather see a team that we beat win than a team that we lost to. So San Diego State favored by 6 points, given a 74.4% chance of winning. So it is an uphill battle for the Utah State Aggies. Significant wins here by Utah State. With Washington State, they beat Washington State to start the season. They also beat Air Force, which became that head-to-head. If Air Force, that was such a close game. I believe that the final score was a 3-point difference. It was such a close game. If Air Force had been able to get that win, Air Force would be sitting here against San Diego State, which, as I'm also an Air Force fan, that is what I would have preferred to see. So, unfortunately, that did not happen, but Utah State sitting here with losses against Boise State, BYU, and Wyoming. Teams that are good, obviously. Boise State and BYU are quality losses. Wyoming is not as quality, but every team in the Mountain West is competitive. But those wins against Washington State and Air Force are significant because it shows that they can win against good programs. They can win against Power 5 programs. They were close in some of those other matchups. Boise State did crush them, but they were competitive in a lot of those matchups, and if they can come in here and play against San Diego State team that is incredibly hard to beat, that they're playing on their own turf, kind of. San Diego State not actually playing in their home stadium because it's still under construction, so they're playing up in a Los Angeles stadium instead. But if they can come in and get this win against San Diego State, it's going to be a huge step forward for a Utah State program. This was still a transition year for this program. They were still trying to recover from losing their top total brain blank here. From losing their previous quarterback who went. Man, I am having a complete brain blank. He just started for Green Bay when Aaron Rodgers was out. I cannot remember for the life of me what his name was. I really apologize for that. That is a major misstep. Anyhow, main point is they were still trying to recover from the loss of that quarterback. They were going through, this was still a rebuild year. Last year they went 1-5. The year before that they went 7-6. And here they are sitting in the Mountain West Championship game with a 9-3 season after going 1-5 last year, getting crushed by Boise State and pretty much crushed by everybody except for New Mexico. So this is an incredible step forward for this program. A win against San Diego State here would be unbelievable. That would be the Cinderella story of the year, considering where they started and now how they're finishing here. It'd be amazing for this program and set them up for a massive amount of success, even maybe jumping into being in contention for a preseason top 25 poll slot coming into next year. So Utah State with a lot on the line. San Diego State obviously with everything on the line. This is going to be a major matchup. San Diego State, their only loss of the season is to Fresno State, a team that they ended up beating out for the Mountain West Championship game here. Wins, though, against Arizona, Utah, Air Force, Nevada, Boise State, as well as many others, but those are the significant ones there. Top player of the game for me is going to be the starting quarterback for San Diego State. And I'm saying the starting quarterback and not the name because I don't know who it's going to be. For the season, most of the season, it has been Johnson here. He's thrown for 1,091 yards, 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But last week, when Johnson went out, Boise State was dominating San Diego State. San Diego State had no answers for Boise State defense. Boise State was completely shutting them down defensively. They were up 16-3. Johnson went out and Brookshire came in, and it was a completely different game. Boise State could not stop them, and San Diego State went on to score 24 unanswered points to win this game. Or win that game. So Brookshire here, he's thrown for 713 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception this season, and he was the main reason that San Diego State won that game against Boise State. So who did they go with as starting quarterback here? I would suspect probably the guy who's, if he's healthy, the guy who's been the starter all season here with Johnson, but I would do not be surprised if he falters at any point, if San Diego State is having any difficulty going, that they throw Brookshire in again, the senior who wants to try and get a win in this matchup. I am going to call San Diego State with the win. It's not what I'm predicting or not what I'm rooting for, but I'm going to predict San Diego State with the win. But I think it will be slightly under on that over-under. I think San Diego State wins by like 5 points or something like that. But I'm going to call slightly under the over-under. I am looking for an incredibly close and exciting game. All right, here we go. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 more conference championship games to preview. I took a little bit longer time on that Mountain West game because that's the one that I'm most excited about as a Mountain West fan. But we want to spend not necessarily equal time, but significant time with each of these conference championship games. All right, here we go with Sun Belt. Sun Belt 10-2 App State at 11-1. Number 24 Louisiana, a team that beat my second team Liberty a couple weeks ago. Number 24 Louisiana, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Louisiana coming down the season on a hot stretch. They lost to Texas to start the season, but they have won every other game since, and they went and beat Liberty, who, despite their 7-5 record, is still a team that I think is a good program, has a potential potential first-round draft pick in Malik Willis there. A very, very, very good program that Louisiana was able to control and was able to They won the game significantly at the end there, but it was kind of a late scoring stretch that got them that. It was a closer game than the final score said, but they won it handily against a good Liberty program. So I have a lot of faith in this Louisiana team. Vegas and ESPN don't. They are favoring App State in this one, giving App State 3-point spread, and Vegas giving App State a 59.2% chance of winning. App State losses to Miami and Louisiana. They've already played this game. This is a rematch. Louisiana favored by won that game 41-13. So that was a loss there by App State. Their only real significant win was against Coastal, who was ranked number 14 at the time and undefeated. And App State went in and beat them. That was a great game. As a Liberty fan, we hate Coastal. A little known rivalry outside of the two programs, but we hate Coastal, and I was so glad to see that loss. Louisiana, like I said, lost to Texas, but after that, undefeated stretch. Not a ton of major wins there, but they did win against App State, and they did win against Liberty. So who was the top player of the game here? Well, it's the former Clemson and former Duke quarterback here in Bryce. He has 2,901 yards passing to almost 3,000 yards passing on the year, 22 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And in the game against Louisiana, he was not a significant factor, surprisingly. He had 133 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was almost a handicap to that program being able to go win that game. They had to rely on their running backs. So it's going to be interesting to see what he comes out and does in this matchup. It's one of the few games that I am calling a repeat win, but I do think Louisiana is able to get this. I think that they are on a hot streak. I put a lot, you should put a lot of faith into streaks, what teams get on, because they start to pick up momentum, especially coming down the end of the stretch here, with Louisiana potentially playing for something big. I talked about what UTSA could have been playing for if they hadn't lost North Texas. Well, Louisiana is now in that slot, because if San Diego State loses, going off of my, I'll call it a theory because I don't have any actual facts necessarily to back it up, of my theory that the number 2 team does get that New Year's 6 spot for the group of 5. If San Diego State loses to Utah State's not going to take that slot. They're not going to jump in. And assuming that Cincinnati beats Houston's going to be pushed back. Louisiana would be in that slot then to take that New Year's 6 bowl game. So they are playing for a lot. And what a team comes in playing for, I think also has a significant role on determining the winner of that matchup, especially when you have two programs that are otherwise closely, if not necessarily equally, but closely matched. And App State and Louisiana are basically equally matched. These are two very good quality programs here. Who am I calling in the win? I am going to call App State with the win, and I'm going to call over on the over-under. I think it'll be more than that 3-point spread. But I also think that this is going to be a good matchup. And unlike maybe Sun Belt matchups of years past, this one is not just significant as far as determining a conference champion. This could be a significant game as far as determining a New Year's 6 bowl game representative. So this is definitely a significant game you want to watch at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. All right, SEC championship game. Always, it seems, this is a a pre-playoff game, or an extension to the playoffs, because it always seems that the SEC has two teams basically competing for it, and that is again the case this season. SEC game, number 1, 12-0, Georgia, going up against number 3, 11-1, Alabama. Alabama sitting there with a loss to Texas A&M, but undefeated other than that. This game in Atlanta, Georgia, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on CBS. Georgia favored with this one with an incredible defense, 6.5 points favorites, and given a 66.5% chance of winning. Georgia, undefeated. Who have they beat? Well, the SEC. They're undefeated in the SEC. That goes without saying, and it also goes without saying that there are a lot of quality wins there. Some highlights: Clemson, Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky. Georgia, undefeated in the SEC, is a major resume builder for any program. So Georgia undefeated in the SEC. Alabama, one loss to Texas A&M, but other than that, wins against Miami, Ole Miss, Arkansas, and then a close win against Auburn, where Auburn really should have had that win, but didn't. A scare by Alabama. And that is going to kind of change my predictions in this one. Let's talk about what we're looking at here. Georgia, Alabama, number 1, number 3. If Alabama beats Georgia, I believe that both teams, and I think I have strong confidence in saying this, because Georgia would only have one loss at that point. I believe that both teams will get into the playoffs if Alabama beats Georgia. You'll be looking at Alabama and Georgia getting in, and then probably, assuming Michigan is able to beat Iowa, you'd see Michigan in there, and then it'd be up to Cincinnati, Oklahoma State to determine who ends up being in that last slot. But the main point here is if Alabama beats Georgia, both teams almost certainly will be in the playoffs. Now, if Georgia beats Alabama, Alabama will be out of the playoffs. Absolutely, because they'll be sitting there at 11-2. There are many, many quality programs on their coattails. You have Oklahoma State, you have Notre Dame just on the outside. I mean, there are programs sitting right here that are ready to jump in and take that last spot. So if Alabama, this is a do or die moment for Alabama. This would be the first year that neither Alabama or Clemson, if Alabama drops out, that neither Alabama or Clemson are represented in the playoffs, and that is insane. Or Ohio State. There's never been a time where one of those three programs has not been represented in the playoffs. So this would be insane if both of them were out. And as a college football fan in general, and not a fan of either of these two programs, we get tired of seeing the same old in the playoffs. That's why everyone's calling for, one of the reasons that everyone's calling for playoff expansion. So I don't have anything personally against Alabama. I'm definitely not a Georgia fan. It'd be nice to see completely fresh faces in the playoffs for once. So I think a lot of the college football world, everybody pretty much outside the state of Alabama, is rooting for Georgia to win this one, and it looks like they have a good chance of doing that. Now, the determiner for Alabama in saying, hey, we're going to win this game, would be their quarterback. They're undersized quarterback, but not undersized in the stats he produced. Bryce Young, 3,901 yards passing, 40 touchdowns, tied for second in the nation, and only 4 interceptions on the year. If he has a great game, and Georgia's defense is hard to have great games against, if he has a great game, Alabama can come in and win this one. You never want to bet against Nick Saban. When he has everything on the line, when the chips are down, he's going to come in big most of the time. The best coach in the nation, and that goes without saying. And his contract definitely backs that up. So Alabama here versus Georgia is a major matchup. I just don't see any way, after Alabama struggled the way they did against Auburn. I know that is a rivalry game. And I know that Alabama has everything on the line in this game, whereas Georgia could lose it and still win. I think there's a good chance Alabama does win this one, but I cannot bet against this Georgia defense. It is incredible. I mean, it's one of the most incredible defenses I've ever seen as a college football fan. And I think that Georgia comes through and gets this win. Now, like I said, determining what a team has to play for coming into it is a major determiner in a matchup. Sorry, I used determiner twice there. But anyhow, what a team has to play for coming into a matchup is an incredible determiner in who's going to win that game. And Alabama has a lot more to play for in this one. And I do think that they are the better coached team as well. I think that they are not necessarily the same skill sets across the board, so I don't think they match up on paper quite as well against Georgia as previous Alabama teams do. But this is a major matchup, obviously, for both these programs. Alabama has everything to lose in this one. So this is kind of me chickening out because I mean, if I was putting it all on the line, I'd probably say Alabama goes on and gets this win, but I'm going to call Georgia in the win. I'm going to call this one safe, but do not be surprised at all if Alabama and Georgia both end up in the playoffs with Alabama coming out of this one with a win. We call under on the over-under. I think it's going to be a very close game. All right, AAC game. This is also at 4 p.m. on ABC. Number 21, 11-1 Houston at number 4, 12-0 Cincinnati. So Cincinnati finally undefeated, sitting at the end of the year here with 2 Power 5 wins. They've had some close losses. So they almost lost to Navy, Tulane, and Tulsa. So they almost lost to all 3 of those teams. Navy and Tulsa were both by under a possession, 7 and 8 points respectively on that one. They struggled early against USF. Able to pull off a win in the end in all of those games, and of course a big win against Notre Dame, which has just been, Notre Dame's had a great season this year other than that one loss, and that has really much pushed Cincinnati into the top 4 versus really anything that they did themselves, which is unfortunate with the group of 5. You kind of have to, your outside factors determine your end destiny because of how unfair the system is. And I actually have a video that I did at the beginning of the season proposing a solution to all of that, a new format for college football. I'll put that into the description. I think you should definitely watch it. I'm going to post it at the end of the year again because I think it's a good one to watch. However, main point here is that Cincinnati's had a little bit of a struggle down the stretch. Now, they won big last week, and they were able to finish strong. And coming in here against Houston, they have everything to play for. They are sitting at number 4, but they have teams hot on their tail, ready to kick them out of that top 4 position. So they know they have to come in and get a big win in this one. Everything's on the line. This is their pre-playoff game. This is their history determiner. So they have everything on the line to come in and win this one. Houston, 11-1, but they haven't really beaten anybody. I mean, they won against SMU, but that's it. They don't have any significant wins. The AAC has overall been terrible this year. They lost to Texas Tech to start the season before going undefeated after that. So it's a tough matchup here for Houston because I do think that they're over-ranked. I mean, number 21 is not a huge ranking, but they're definitely a team that wouldn't be 11-1 otherwise if they'd played some better teams, I think. So it's not a significant challenge here for Cincinnati based on previous AAC championship games. It's not a significant challenge, but it is a significant challenge in that Cincinnati has struggled to win against better or worse teams than Houston. Houston definitely better than Tulsa, Tulane, or Navy. And Cincinnati has everything to lose in this one if they don't go out and play. That's a lot of pressure on a program to have to go in and know that it doesn't matter if you win, you need to win by a couple of scores at least to really be able to have any say in your own destiny in determining this one at the end. A big determiner for their destiny is going to be Desmond Ridder, their quarterback, over 3,000 yards passing. Exactly 3,000 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Has struggled in some of their matchups, and that's really been kind of how he plays is how Cincinnati ends up playing as a whole. They're really kind of built around that quarterback position. So if he comes in here and has a massive game, which he needs to, then Cincinnati is going to be golden in getting this win. And I think if they can beat Houston by 3 touchdowns, I think that will be enough of a win there that it doesn't matter what happens outside of them. They will hold on to that 4th slot there and be able to box out Oklahoma State and definitely Notre Dame, who they already have a win against. But it all comes down to how they're able to perform in this final matchup of the season. So Cincinnati is favored by 10.5 points, given an 82.6% chance of winning. I am going to call Cincinnati with a win, but I don't think it's going to be over. I think it's going to be under here on the overall score. I think Cincinnati's going to win it, but it's going to be under on the overall score because I think Houston is going to, Houston is playing for a lot here as well. They're a team that, I say they're playing for a lot, but they're not really, I guess, because if they beat Cincinnati, Cincinnati is not going to drop, most likely, is not going to drop below Houston. I mean, you could see a wild pole reversal because at the end of the day, they would have the same record and they would own the head-to-head. They might jump Cincinnati to be able to get that New Year's Six slot for going into that New Year's Six bowl game. So you could see a wild pole reversal here. So I guess, but technically, probably if Houston wins this game, Cincinnati's still going to get that New Year's Six slot. And if Cincinnati wins this game, they'll knock Houston out of the running for it. So it's kind of an unfair situation that Houston is placed in here, being so far back and unfortunately losing to Texas Tech and not really playing anybody since then, which has kind of really impacted their ability to go out and reach the high ceiling that Cincinnati has. it's an unfortunate situation for Houston that they don't playing for a lot. So I think the fact that Cincinnati is playing for so much in this one is going to get them the win, despite how they have struggled to finish some of these games. But I do think it's going to be under on that over/under. All right. 2 more and we're done. It's good because my throat's starting to get a little sore here coming down the final stretch. Gotta hydrate here. There we go. Let's finish strong last couple games. All right. Big Ten game. Number 2, 11-1 Michigan, who had that surprise win against Ohio State in the rivalry weekend, versus number 13, 10-2 Iowa, Indianapolis, Indiana, 8 p.m. Fox. Now, I'm a little mad at Michigan here, because while I have rooted for so long for Michigan to win their games, not because I'm a Michigan fan, but because I really hate Ohio State, and because Ohio State fans hate Michigan, I have rooted for Michigan in a lot of their matchups. And I really am a Jim Harbaugh fan, but I was this close to being able to make a video at the end of the year called Verbs of the Big Ten, and making a verb for each Big Ten team. And for Michigan, my verb for Michigan was going to be, or the definition of that verb for Michigan was going to be a team that is never able to win the big matchups. And you know, maybe it's a good thing we don't get to make that video, because it's not a great verb necessarily, but Michigan has had so many matchups or so many seasons here under Jim Harbaugh. It's really a verb against Jim Harbaugh than it is against Michigan, where they have played great in between. They've set themselves up on great success, major blowouts, undefeated stretches, and then they get to these key matchups, Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State. They get to these key matchups and they falter, and they don't win the key games when they need to. And it's really been a trend here for Harbaugh. He finally gets the win here against Ohio State, and they are now set up to be a top 4 playoff team. Can they finish? Is Harbaugh going to Harbaugh out and lose in a key moment when he has set himself up to win, and is the better team and should win, but loses anyway? That's the big question in this one. Michigan, favored by 11 points, given a 76.4% chance of winning it. Michigan lost. Their only loss this season was to Michigan State. Another classic Harbaugh moment when they lost when they shouldn't have. I was calling Michigan for the win. Michigan State ended up winning that game. Wins against Penn State and Ohio State are significant for this program. Iowa, they lost in back-to-back weeks. They had a pretty good stretch going. They were into the top 4, and then they lost to Purdue and Wisconsin in back-to-back weeks. And then they finished strong out the rest of the stretch. They have wins against Iowa State and Penn State here to finish out the rest of the season. Or they won against Iowa State early in the season, then finished the season strong with a win against Penn State. Are they able to come in here and get this win when they absolutely have to? It's going to be a big determiner in this one. A big factor in this game is going to be Michigan running back Haskins here, who has rushed for 1,232 yards and 18 touchdowns. He had 169 yards rushing and 5 touchdowns versus Ohio State. The only player in the series history to ever have 5 touchdowns in a game, first in that matchup. My issue here, though, is that I think that Michigan won that game because he had a huge game. Because he had those 5 touchdowns, Michigan scored 42 points. 5 of those, so all but one of those touchdowns came off of one guy. That's not necessarily showing a massive improvement in Michigan's ability to go out to for Jim Harbaugh to call the right game, for them to go out and get the win when you're so determined on a kind of a freak performance by one player. Harbaugh has not. He's one win against Ohio State when he absolutely had to, but he hasn't done that the rest of his entire career. And Michigan here has set themselves up for success. They have an 11-1 record. They're in the top 4. They're coming off of a massive win. Everything is set up here. It is a perfect recipe for them to go lose their next game in classic Harbaugh fashion. It would be absolutely to form for them to lose this next game. So even though they are the better team, even though Harbaugh is the better coach, even though they should win this game, I don't think they will, because they never do when they have to. They have set themselves up for failure by being this good. Harbaugh has not shown any ability to turn the corner to being the consistent coach that he was hired to be for this program. So I think that I'm calling against all the odds. I think Iowa, in a shocker, wins this one, which pushes Oklahoma State with a win into the top 4 and gives the top 4 being Georgia, Georgia, Cincinnati, and Oklahoma State, and then we'll have to see how Alabama plays out in that one. We could potentially see Notre Dame or even Michigan State jump into the top 4 here, or shoot, who's sitting here at number 6? I think it's Michigan State, right? Anyhow, whoever jumps, you could see a Final Four drastically different from what we're seeing right now, and I think that one of those teams outside that's going to allow Oklahoma State to jump here into the top 4 is going to be Michigan, losing this one in classic Harbaugh fashion when they absolutely should. On paper, am I predicting a loss here by Michigan? No. But knowing everything that we know about this coach, about this program, all the factors going into this one, I absolutely think that Iowa, in a shocker, walks away with a win in this matchup. All right, final conference championship game of the video here, and also of the week. It's going to be 10-2 number 15 Pitt versus 10-2 number 16 Wake Forest. Pitt ranked at number 3. Pitt given us Pitt favored by 3 points, given a 61.5% chance of winning. And you know what I did? I forgot to write down the time and what channel it's on. I believe it's on the ACC network. I just didn't write down the time, so I'll put that in the remarks section. I apologize for that. Last game of the video, and I forgot to write that down, so I apologize for that. But Pitt versus Wake Forest, this is crazy. I mean, if you told me at the beginning of the season that we would be seeing these two teams, that Clemson wouldn't be in the discussion, that I was predicting Clemson versus North Carolina. I think most people were as well, but the fact that Clemson isn't even in this discussion, or North Carolina, that it's Pitt and Wake Forest, I mean, these are not power teams out of this conference. These are teams that have been bottom tier, bottom feeders in this conference, and here they are. One of them is going to walk away with the conference championship in the ACC. Just shows you what an insane college football season this has been this year. So Pitt with losses here to Western Michigan, a 7-5 Western Michigan program, and almost equally embarrassing, a loss to Miami. But they have wins against Clemson, North Carolina, and I think that UVA is a pretty good win for them as well. But Clemson and North Carolina are definitely good wins for this program. The two teams that I would expected to have been sitting here at the end of the season in this conference championship game, they have wins against both of those programs. Wake Forest losses to North Carolina and Clemson, so the opposite. But they have wins against UVA and against NC State. Now, Pittsburgh is favored in this one, and I have had doubts about both of these programs the whole season, but I've had more doubts about Wake Forest. But the way that they were able to handle NC State, who I think was the better team in that matchup, and that was a great game. I think the way they were able to handle NC State, even though they ended up losing to a Clemson team that was trying to surge here into a good finish at the end of the season, and maybe put themselves up into the conversation for the ACC championship matchup. Even though they lost that game to Clemson, I think that we should evaluate them off that win against NC State. And that was a significant win. And I think better even than Pittsburgh's wins here against a Clemson team that was still trying to find itself, and a North Carolina team that's been down this year. Or even a UVA team who Wake Forest also has a win against. The other factor here is that even though Pickett has the more yards, my key player of the game, and I think the better quarterback in this one, is Sam Hartman, who's thrown for 3,711 yards passing, 34 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. I just think Wake Forest has impressed me so much more than Pittsburgh has in the way that they have played their matchups here throughout the season and coming down the final stretch. And they had a lot more to play for. I mean, Pittsburgh, it wasn't really a massive competition for their division in the ACC there, but Wake Forest had to beat out NC State and Clemson to get this slot. They were playing with a lot more cards on the table to try and get into the conference championship game, and they were able to handle business in a professional manner, and that's what I like to see, that business-like attitude, going in, taking care of what they needed to, getting the wins when they needed to, and winning the big matchups, even if they were surprised by a resurgent Clemson team late. I think Wake Forest gets the win in this one. I'm calling over on the over-under, so a little bit of a surprise here, and Wake Forest walks away with ACC championship game. Regardless of who wins this one, though, it will be a surprise that either of them wins ACC's championship game. And like I said, a just perfect example of the insane college football season. A perfect embodiment of the insane college football season that we've had this year. Can't wait for another final major insane week of college football. We're not over yet. There's so much more college football left to play. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos here down the final stretch where we preview these bowl games. I'm excited for it. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure you like and subscribe. Like I said, I'm going to be doing those bowl game previews, so you don't want to miss out on that. I cannot wait for a final crazy weekend of college football. Thank you for watching this video. As always, go Big Blue.